I never thought I'd find myself feeling so utterly alone in a luxury suite at the Miami Beach resort. What was meant to be a meaningful family vacation has spiraled into a nightmare, thanks to my sister-in-law Diana Miller. I'm James Thompson, a 35-year-old investment banker, and I'm here with my wife Sarah, a dedicated pediatrician. We've been married for 10 wonderful years. Also present are Sarah's elderly parents, Robert Walsh, a 73-year-old retired military officer whose health has been declining, and Margaret Walsh, his 68-year-old wife. And then there's Diana, Sarah's 40-year-old sister, whose presence has turned this well-intentioned family gathering into an exercise in patience. Sarah and I have built a comfortable life together. While my role at the investment bank and her pediatric practice have blessed us financially, we've always tried to remain grounded. We take several vacations each year, choosing not to have children to focus on our careers and each other. Our lifestyle reflects our success, but we've never felt the need to flaunt it. For the past few years, we've made it a point to include Sarah's parents in one of our annual trips. Robert's health has been deteriorating rapidly, and Margaret struggles to manage traveling alone with him. This summer's trip held special significance. Robert had expressed a wish to revisit Miami, where he and Margaret had spent their honeymoon nearly 5 decades ago. There was an urgency in his voice that suggested he feared this might be his last chance to relive those precious memories. When he offered to contribute to the expenses, knowing the cost of a week in Miami, I immediately declined. These people have been more than in-laws to me, they've been true parents. My own middle-class background and rise through Wall Street have taught me the value of both money and family. I wanted to do this for them, and my position at the bank meant I could comfortably cover such expenses. Everything changed when Diana asked to join us. Unlike Sarah and me, Diana's financial situation has always been strained. Her part-time office job and her husband Michael's high school teacher salary barely cover their basic needs with 3 school-age children. She frequently comments on her vacation photos on social media, lamenting how she hasn't had a proper vacation since her honeymoon. This year, she directly approached us about joining the Miami trip, fully aware that I would need to cover all her expenses. I agreed. After all, family should help family. If only I had known what that decision would lead to. First day at Miami. The tension began the moment we landed in Miami. As we walked through the airport's VIP lounge, a perk from my frequent business travel, I caught Diana's sideways glances at our preferential treatment. Her Instagram was already flooded with photos of the lounge's amenities, carefully edited to hide her obvious discomfort with our lifestyle differences. The first red flag appeared just hours after checking into our beach resort. Standing on the balcony of our ocean view suite, Diana suggested taking a family photo against the stunning backdrop. I reached for my phone, ready to set the timer so everyone could be included. That's when she stopped me. "Oh, James, could you take the picture for us?" Diana's voice was honey sweet, but her intent was clear as she continued. "We want just the 4 of us. Mom, Dad, Sarah, and me." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I maintained my composure. I told myself it was natural for them to want one photo of their original family unit. Sarah caught my eye with an apologetic look, but remained silent. Robert and Margaret exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly sensing the underlying tension. But this wasn't a one-time occurrence. Diana transformed it into the theme of our entire vacation. At every tourist spot, every restaurant, every memorable moment, she found ways to exclude me. "Just the 4 of us," or "this one's for the Walsh family album," became her constant refrain. I became the designated photographer, forever behind the camera, instead of creating memories with my wife and in-laws. What made it worse was Diana's social media presence. Every photo she posted carefully crafted a narrative where I didn't exist in this family vacation. Her Instagram stories showed family moments where I was conspicuously absent, despite being the one funding this entire experience. Sarah would occasionally intervene, insisting I was family too, and my in-laws would invite me to join the photos, but Diana always managed to manipulate the situation until I was back behind the camera. "James, dear, you're so good with the camera," she'd say with that artificial sweetness. "We need your photographer's eye for these special family moments." Each compliment felt like a carefully crafted insult, designed to keep me in my place, as an outsider looking in at my own family vacation. At the resort pool, after a long day of walking and sightseeing, I was looking forward to relaxing in the resort's infinity pool with its breathtaking ocean view. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, a perfect moment for relaxation. Just as I was about to step into the pool, Diana's voice cut through my moment of peace. "James, would you mind staying out for a bit? We want to get a girl's photo. Just Sarah, Mom, and me." Diana's tone was polite, but her eyes held that now familiar glint of satisfaction. What started as one seemingly innocent request turned into an hour-long photo shoot, with me standing at the poolside in my swim shorts, feeling increasingly out of place. First, it was the women's photo, then a siblings shot, then another original family picture. Each time I attempted to join the group, Diana would conjure up another combination that conveniently excluded me. "Oh, now let's get one with just Mom and her daughters. Dad, come join us for a parents and daughters shot. Sarah, let's recreate that photo from our teenage years." The other hotel guests were starting to give me curious looks. The man who stood awkwardly at the pool's edge, holding an expensive phone and taking endless photos while his family enjoyed themselves in the water. I couldn't help but wonder why Diana had bothered coming on this trip, if my presence was such an inconvenience to her perfect family narrative. Robert caught my eye several times during this performance, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and helplessness. Margaret tried to include me by suggesting group photos, but Diana always had a ready excuse to maintain her exclusive family moments. Sarah, trapped between sister and husband, attempted weak compromises that satisfied no one. I watched as Diana meticulously reviewed each photo, immediately uploading the best ones to her Instagram with captions like "making precious memories with my real family" and "nothing better than quality time with the people who matter most." Each post felt like a deliberate jab, a careful curation of moments designed to erase my presence from this family vacation. The boat ride incident. The next day's boat ride along Miami's coastline became an even more blatant display of Diana's exclusion tactics. We arrived at the marina, where they offered scenic rides in elegant boats designed with 2 rows of 2 seats, each perfect for parties of 4. But we were 5. Before anyone could suggest a fair rotation system, Diana jumped in with her ready-made plan, her voice carrying the false brightness I'd grown to dread. "Oh, this is perfect. Mom and Dad can sit together in the front row, and Sarah, you'll sit with me in the back. It'll be just perfect for family photos." Her eyes barely flickered to me as she added, "James, you don't mind taking the next boat, do you? You're so good at getting candid shots of us." I ended up alone in the following boat, wedged between a honeymooning couple and an elderly tourist. From my position, I had a perfect view of Diana orchestrating what she called authentic family moments, carefully posed shots that she immediately started editing for her social media feed. The souvenir photo from their boat ride now sits prominently on Diana's Instagram, captioned, "Making memories with the ones who matter most #family first #Miami life." The image shows my wife and her family, all smiles and perfect poses, while I sat in another boat, surrounded by strangers, still expected to document their perfect family moment through my phone's zoom lens. Sarah kept glancing back at my boat, her expression torn between guilt and helplessness. Robert and Margaret looked uncomfortable, but neither spoke up. This had become the pattern. Everyone recognizing the wrongness of the situation, but nobody willing to disrupt Diana's carefully choreographed family narrative. I watched as Diana leaned in close to Sarah, their heads together as they looked at the photos on her phone, and felt a strange mix of anger and resignation. Here I was, funding this entire luxury vacation, yet somehow being made to feel like an intruder in my own family gathering. Upscale restaurant scene. The dinner at Miami's most exclusive waterfront restaurant was the culmination of weeks of careful planning. I'd spent considerable time securing this reservation, specifically requesting a prime table for the sunset view. When we arrived, the hostess led us to a perfectly positioned round table for six, ideally situated to catch the golden hour light across the ocean. I had envisioned sharing this romantic moment with Sarah, the two of us seated together while enjoying the view with her parents across from us. Diana, being the last-minute addition to our trip, could have easily taken one of the side seats. Instead, before anyone could even pull out a chair, Diana smoothly slipped into the seat next to Sarah, while her parents naturally took the prime viewing spots. "Sarah, sit here with me. We can get the perfect sister selfie with this lighting," Diana exclaimed, her voice carrying that artificial enthusiasm that had become all too familiar. I found myself relegated to the worst possible position, wedged between the busy server station and Robert, my back to the sunset I had specifically planned this dinner around. When Sarah noticed my discomfort and suggested we rearrange the seating, Diana's mask slipped for a moment. "Oh, Sarah, stop being so clingy," she snapped, her voice sharp. "This is a family vacation, remember? We never get to spend time together anymore since you married into money." The table fell silent. Robert nearly choked on his water, while Margaret's face flushed red with embarrassment. Sarah's eyes widened at her sister's naked hostility, but she remained frozen in her seat, caught between family loyalties. The dinner only deteriorated from there. Every attempt I made to join the conversation was met with Diana's skilled deflection. She continuously steered discussions toward childhood memories, high school adventures, and family inside jokes, topics that naturally excluded me. "Remember that summer at Lake Michigan?" Diana would start, her voice dripping with nostalgia. Before all this, she gestured vaguely at our luxurious surroundings, her meaning clear. Even when Sarah or her parents tried to include me by explaining the context or connecting stories to current events, Diana would immediately interrupt and redirect the conversation. She created an impenetrable wall of shared history that left me feeling like an outsider at my own dinner table. By the time dessert arrived, I had given up trying to participate, instead watching the sun set through the reflection in the window behind Diana's head. The spa incident. The final insult came during our planned spa day. I had meticulously arranged private suites at the resort's luxury spa, one for Sarah and me, another for her parents, and a solo treatment room for Diana. When Robert wasn't feeling well and decided to stay back at the beach, I thought the four of us could still enjoy the spa treatments together. But Diana saw another opportunity to exclude me. With that now familiar artificial smile, she turned to me. "James, why don't you keep Dad company instead? We really need a girls' day at the spa. You understand, don't you?" The manipulation was obvious. She was once again pushing me out of an activity I had planned and paid for, using Robert's condition as leverage to make me look selfish if I protested. Sarah shot me an apologetic glance, but remained silent, while Margaret looked increasingly uncomfortable with her daughter's behavior. Surprisingly, the day turned out better than expected, though not in the way I had planned. Sitting with Robert on the beach, watching the waves roll in, we had one of our most genuine conversations ever. He shared stories about his military service, about raising his daughters, and offered wisdom from his years of experience. "You know, son," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his years, Sometimes family is more complicated than we'd like it to be. Sarah chose well with you. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. I wanted to tell him about how Diana was treating me, to let out all the frustration that had been building throughout the trip. But watching him enjoy the ocean breeze, sharing his memories with such contentment, I couldn't bring myself to burden him with family drama. His health was already fragile enough without adding to his stress. That evening, I tried discussing this with Sarah in our hotel room. While she acknowledged my hurt feelings, her response left me even more confused. "I know Diana can be difficult," she said, sitting on the edge of our king-sized bed. "But try to understand. Our childhood was marked by Dad's frequent deployments. We rarely had proper family vacations together, and now, with Dad's health declining." Her voice trailed off, heavy with emotion. Her explanation made me question myself. Was I being overly sensitive? Was it wrong of me to expect inclusion just because I was funding the trip? The fact that I was even questioning my right to feel hurt made me realize how deeply Diana's behavior had affected my confidence. The breaking point. By the final days of our Miami trip, the constant exclusion and disrespect had reached a boiling point. The morning before our departure, I finally reached my limit. I found a moment alone with Sarah in our hotel room and confronted her about her passive stance throughout the trip. "Sarah, I need to talk about what's been happening," I began, my voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Every single moment of this trip, your sister has gone out of her way to exclude me. And you've barely said a word." But Sarah's response was still focused on maintaining peace. "James, I know it's been difficult," she said, her fingers nervously twisting her wedding ring. "But confrontation would only create drama that could spoil what might be one of Dad's last family trips." Her words made logical sense, but they felt like another betrayal. Once again, my feelings were being sacrificed for the sake of family harmony. In that moment, something shifted inside me. While I nodded along with Sarah's plea to let things go, my mind was already formulating a plan. Diana had spent the entire vacation treating me like an unwanted outsider while happily enjoying the luxury accommodations and amenities I was providing. She seemed to have forgotten that this entire trip, every meal, every activity, every spa treatment she had indulged in was happening because of me. If she wanted to pretend I wasn't part of the family, then perhaps it was time to show her exactly what that meant. "You know what's going to happen," I told Sarah quietly. "And you can maintain your neutrality, just as you have all week." Sarah looked at me for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. After a week of watching her sister systematically exclude me from every family moment, she seemed willing to let karma take its course. I suggested that Sarah take her parents to the airport ahead of us, claiming Diana and I would follow later. As they left, Robert gave me a knowing look and a firm handshake. I could have sworn I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. The hotel checkout. Once they left, I approached the front desk with my carefully considered strategy. The hotel's billing system was perfectly suited for what I had in mind. While the room rates had been prepaid, all additional charges accumulated during the stay were settled at checkout. This included every room service order, every spa treatment, and every poolside cocktail that Diana had so freely enjoyed, assuming I would cover it all. "I need to separate the bills by suite," I explained to the manager, fabricating a story about tax purposes. He didn't even blink. It was apparently a standard enough procedure. As I stood there watching him process the separation, I couldn't help but reflect on how Diana had never once considered the cost of her actions, either emotional or financial. After settling the bills for my room and my in-laws' suite, I waited in the lobby's plush seating area. When the manager called Diana down to settle her account, the color drained from her face as she stared at the itemized bill in her hands. The total would have covered several months of her usual expenses. "There must be some mistake," she stammered, her eyes darting between the bill and my face. "James, you're not covering this?" "I've already paid for my family," I replied calmly, emphasizing the word family, just as she had done all week. "You can cover your own expenses." Diana's hand was shaking slightly as she handed her credit card to the manager. The declined transaction message only confirmed what I had suspected. She'd spent the entire week living far beyond her means, secure in her assumption that I would foot the bill. The manager swiped her card again, but the result was the same. Her credit limit wasn't even close to covering half of what she owed. For the next 30 minutes, I watched from my comfortable position as Diana paced the lobby, making frantic phone calls. Every few minutes, she'd throw desperate glances my way, clearly hoping I'd cave and offer to pay. But I maintained my position, outwardly calm, while inwardly savoring every second of her predicament. Finally, she made the call she'd been avoiding. I could hear Michael's voice rising through the phone as she explained the situation. The bill she'd racked up amounted to nearly his entire monthly teaching salary. After what seemed like an eternity of tense negotiations, the money was finally wired to cover the bill. The airport scene. During the cab ride to the airport, Diana sat in stony silence, likely contemplating how she would face Michael when she got home. What she didn't know was that her troubles weren't over yet. As we arrived at the airport, already cutting it close to departure time, she discovered I hadn't completed her flight check-in. While I breezed through priority check-in, another perk from my frequent business travel, she was left standing in the regular line, struggling with her oversized designer luggage and growing increasingly agitated as she watched the minutes tick by. The final blow came at the gate when she realized I had quietly arranged business class upgrades for myself, Sarah, and her parents, a nice surprise to end their trip comfortably. Diana's face as she trudged past our spacious business class seats told the whole story. She didn't say a word, but her clenched jaw and rigid posture spoke volumes. For the entire flight, she sat in economy while we enjoyed premium service up front. When we landed, Diana's composure finally cracked. She rushed to her parents at baggage claim, tears streaming down her face as she launched into her version of events. "He abandoned me at the hotel," she cried, her voice carrying across the terminal. "He humiliated me in public and deliberately excluded me from the flight upgrades." She conveniently left out her week-long campaign to exclude me from every family moment. Her father, already tired from the journey, became visibly distressed as she continued her performance. Even in this moment, she showed no concern for his health, too focused on painting herself as the victim. I maintained my composure, waiting for the right moment to speak. When I finally did, my voice was calm. "I simply treated you the way you treated me all week. If you don't consider me family enough to include in the memories, why should you expect me to cover your expenses as family?" Her performance came to an abrupt halt when Margaret intervened. After a week of watching her daughter's behavior, she had reached her limit. "Diana, enough," she said firmly. "We don't want to get involved, but we saw how you cornered James the whole time. We tried to include him, but you had your own agenda. Now deal with it." The final confrontation. Instead of accepting responsibility, Diana lashed out more viciously. Her carefully maintained facade crumbled completely as she turned on me. "You're using your money to control this family," she shouted, her voice echoing through the baggage claim area. Then she rounded on Sarah, her face contorted with anger. "You sided with your husband to humiliate your own sister, your own blood." She spat. "You're so blinded by his Wall Street money that you can't see what he really is. Just wait. He'll end up cheating on you with some young intern, and you won't be able to do anything about it because you're too dependent on his lifestyle." The baseless accusation sparked a fierce response from Sarah, who finally found her voice. "How dare you?" she shot back, her professional composure shattering. James has done nothing but support this family, while you've spent the entire week trying to exclude him. And now you have the audacity to make up lies about him? The situation might have escalated further, if not for Robert's intervention. Throughout the trip, he had maintained a dignified silence, observing everything but saying little. "Diana," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the authority of his military years. "Your brother-in-law has done more than enough for you. If you can't show basic gratitude and respect, then keep your mouth shut." The simple statement effectively ended Diana's tirade, though the damage to family relationships was already done. After Robert's final words, a heavy silence fell over the airport terminal. His request to leave immediately was filled with quiet authority, and I quickly helped him to the car. We drove away, leaving Diana standing there alone, her pride preventing her from asking for a ride despite being 70 miles from home. The drive to my in-laws' house was peaceful. When we arrived, both Robert and Margaret expressed genuine gratitude for the vacation. Robert's hug lasted longer than usual, communicating more than words ever could. That hug validated everything. It told me that despite Diana's attempts to paint me as an outsider, I was truly part of this family. Epilogue: Thanksgiving. Sarah and I returned home and initially avoided discussing what had happened, falling back into our normal routines at the bank and her pediatric practice. The topic remained untouched until a few days later, when Sarah finally broke the silence during dinner in our apartment. "Diana's in serious financial trouble," she said softly, pushing her food around her plate. "Michael is furious about having to empty his savings to cover her vacation expenses. He's demanding she repay every cent and refuses to save her pompous behind, as he put it. She's struggling to manage both the repayment and her regular bills." While Sarah supported my actions, she gently suggested I might have gone too far. But even as she said it, she acknowledged that her sister had needed this wake-up call. She spent years taking advantage of others' generosity while treating them with contempt, Sarah admitted. Maybe this was the lesson she needed. During Thanksgiving preparations, Margaret had been planning an extra special celebration, knowing it might be one of the last holidays with Robert given his declining health. But Diana's husband threw a wrench in the plans by refusing to attend. His reason? He couldn't bear to sit at the same table as someone who would humiliate a financially weaker person. That's when Margaret finally had enough. She sat Michael down and revealed the full story of Diana's behavior during the Miami trip. "Look at the vacation photos," she told him. "Really look at them." The evidence was right there, in Diana's own social media posts. Photo after photo where I had been deliberately excluded, pushed behind the camera, or made to sit apart. The Miami incident had apparently been the catalyst for a major fight in Diana's marriage. Rather than learning humility from the experience, she had turned her humiliation into ammunition against Michael, constantly degrading him for his teacher's salary. She began demanding that he take on a second job, despite only working part-time herself. The entitled attitude that had been so evident during our Miami vacation was apparently just the tip of the iceberg. The woman who had spent a week racking up expenses she couldn't pay was now berating her hardworking husband for not providing her with a more luxurious lifestyle. On our drive home from Thanksgiving dinner, Sarah and I reflected on how our well-intentioned invitation had backfired. We had inadvertently given Diana a glimpse of a lifestyle she couldn't sustain, and now her marriage was paying the price. The whole situation left me feeling guilty, not for making her pay her own bills, but for exposing her to a standard of living that had corrupted her perspective so completely.